Yeah, I didn't see it. I gotta get the paper. Rome Sentinel, right, Gary?
It may have been Rome Sentinel. It was someplace or other, and I saw it was you, and I was pleased to read it. You know.
Hey, I just finished, you lent me a book 3 years ago. I just finished it. Biology. I said I gotta bring it to you. It was really good. I was supposed to get it done a while ago.
It's hard to hear you with all the background noise. Maybe you got to get back to your microphone.
Yeah, do that. Right here?
I must have one somewhere.
Now I can hear you.
Can you hear me now, Gary?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I was telling you, you lent me a book, Biology, B-U-Y-ology.
Yeah.
How people find. And so I just finished it last night. I said, I gotta get this back to Gary. I think years ago.
Steve?
Yeah.
When you start the meeting, I'm going to ask you to break out the first set of minutes from the others because I have to vote no.
Okay.
The March 10th one.
Just remind me.
Okay, we'll do.
Yeah, you guys are
Time no see, Russ. How are you?
Mrs. Powell, can you hear me? Hello, Cindy. When you come back.
Wow.
And you know what? There's no middle road. We are, you are not. I know, right?
So we have negotiations tomorrow, right?
What's gonna happen? What's the worst thing that's gonna happen? And the effect are. Good to be seen. I'm okay. We'll talk tomorrow, right?
Okay.
She knows enough about kosher. I think we get brought on us to other.
Well, that's just. You definitely know. That's what I said. I don't know.
Right.
Also the ones in this.
Yeah.
It's been safety, it's one of the few things
Okay, thank you.
So it's white girl still in there, contact in there. Welcome to bed.
Yeah, how you doing?
That's what it's called. They want to expand it. Now they made it. It's not even a closer, you know, it's safety. It's a truancy, it's a truancy. So yeah, and there, we can expand that, contact, so. You might not, it is. I cannot, but it's edited.
All right. I have a provision.
Oh, thank you.
Dr. Gilbert, how are we?
Let's look at the
Michael Moore and I got here, right? Yeah, neither one of us had our kids right. So you guys got shotgun in the window.
Yeah, you did, you scared me to death.
I got a knock at your window.
Yeah.
So, I'm sitting here, and Aunt Mike is looking at you, and she's going like this. I'm like, what's going on? And there's Mike in the window.
So you're 6 feet away from me. Couldn't take it off.
I mean, as long as I'm not close to them, it's
This way you're ready to sit down.
my wife's always yelling at me, forget, she says, look, that's nice. I don't want to try, I'm not trying to cause trouble, I just forget sometimes. This here was in my pocket, so this is my pocket, I got on my guard, looking all over, looking at my back, finally, I reached my pocket. Hey, Corey, how are you?
How are you?
Just tell
When we start the minutes, when you go into the approval of the minutes, you're gonna say, corrections without, please include corrections.
Good to see you.
Page 4 motion, please add Heather Johnson. Okay?
You were more excited. I can't remember the last time I read it.
Hello, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. We're going to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, I don't know.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Outstanding. That never gets old. All right. Tell me the pledge. We're going to do, before we go too much further into anything else, we're going to do a roll call because Deb Kimball will help us with that. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
The button. Okay, if you could please stay here once I call your name. Mr. Boucher,
Here.
Mr. Stewart,
Here.
Mrs. Anderson. Here. Mrs. Corbin. Here. Mrs. Urban. Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Falvo.
Here.
Mr. Moore.
Here.
Mr. Nelson.
Here.
Mr. Nicotero.
Here.
Dr. Porcelli.
Here.
Mr. Salerno. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to go right off into our agenda. And Dr. Kilburn, we're going to do any recognition of visitors or communication from the floor?
Nope, but we do have correspondence.
We do have correspondence, this correspondence, correct?
Yes, no, this is the
Oh, yours correspondence.
We have some congratulations to offer to Mr. Gary Nelson. He's probably not expecting this. Well, what do you know, Gary? So, the New York State School Boards Association wants to point out that Gary Nelson has earned the Level 4 Board Lifetime Achievement Award. Woo-hoo! This includes recognition in the on-board newspaper as well as the following. A certificate of recognition on this commemorative plaque, which is inside of this box, but there's commemorative plaque in this box. A certificate for a free registration to the NYSBA annual convention, so nice for you. And an executive pen set. So we have a plaque, we have a pen set, which is included in the plaque, a lovely letter to Gary, along with the convention scholarship free coupon. So give a round of applause again to Mr. Gary Nelson.
Hanging around long enough?
I'm pretty sure it is, yes.
Give out merit badges. Touchdowns. Very cool.
Hello, Heather. That's all I have for correspondence.
Correspondence, that's it then. All right, we'll keep moving on, and then we go to part 6. We go right on to the district superintendent's report already.
We do, and what I'm wondering is, Scott, can you pull up, we shared with you in the Google Docs the priorities. It was a share you would have received from Ann Turner for the organizational priorities in Google. And then if we do a screen share, those in Zoom can see it and we can all see it on the screen. There we go. So I want to review the board priorities. This really is just a continuation of the conversation that we had in our last meeting. And it was, I just got to tell you, like, I love board conversations and I enjoyed that. And this is where Gary Nelson came up with the idea of BOCES, I think, as a central connector, but we were not going to use the word deaf, birth to deaf, right? So we had this really great conversation.
Can I say something here?
You may.
This wasn't my idea.
That's
This
true,
is
it came up in the
something
last retreat,
I
right?
think Russ came up with 5 years ago.
Perfect.
And the board has been discussing for a long time.
Long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's glad to see that everyone's excited about it.
It is exciting. And so after having met all of us, we went to the cabinet the next day to discuss these same priorities. And they haven't really changed, but we formalized it a little more. And are just wanting again to check with the board on where you are with it. So if you want to just move it, just a little bit back, Scott, great. So we talked about how priorities make it possible to accomplish goals, and that if the board can establish the priorities for the organization, then every single one of the departments and also the board will then create SMART goals that align to the priorities. So we're going to show you the priorities as we have them now, and then an example of what a SMART goal looks like for our PPL program. So under the category of BOCES serves as a helping hand, we have written BOCES serves as a helping hand by anticipating the needs of the component districts so that they may respond to the changing educational landscape while being mindful of cost-saving opportunities. And this was well received by not only the board here, but also by the cabinet. And if you could just scroll a little bit, Scott. The next one we see is BOCES as a central connector. BOCES serves as a central connector by facilitating and connecting the component districts with agencies and organizations, both locally and regionally, so they can support students' growth from birth through career. It used to say birth to death, but career it is. This was also well received by the cabinet, in addition to the really wonderful discussion we had here among the board members. And then the third one was BOCES exemplifies equity and access by infusing inclusive values throughout the organization and within teaching and learning. So next shows an examples, and Scott, I'll just ask you to scroll so we can put that up higher. Perfect. BOCES serves as a helping hand. We see the larger organizational priority by anticipating the needs of the component districts so they may respond to the changing educational landscape while being mindful of cost-saving opportunities for districts. And then we want to make sure that we have goals that are SMART, specific, measurable, appropriate or achievable, realistic but rigorous, and time limited. And here's an example of a department goal. So the PPL department might look at this and say, on the priority for BOCES as a helping hand, we would create the goal that the PPL will implement at least 2 curriculum audits and follow-up surveys within the component districts during the 21-22 school year. Audit surveys will indicate satisfaction with OHM audit services and intent, the district's intent, to implement particular curricular practices that were related to those audit recommendations. So we have a goal that aligns to BOCES working as the helping hand. It fits PPL and the work that they do. It's specific, measurable, realistic, and it's time-bound. And then we show how that would be broken down even further within the PPL department. Scroll away, Scott. So a practitioner, one of, let's say, the curriculum specialists who would be implementing this audit would follow these parameters. PPL will offer or implement, it could say 2 or 3 audits for ELA math and curriculum programs, and they'd name the districts to support the learning decisions and curriculum decisions. Measurable districts will receive written recommendations and satisfaction survey documents. They'd make sure that the timelines were created for the scope of the audit as per each district's need. And then they would assist the districts in determining the learning loss levels as well as the path forward with curriculum decisions. And then time limited as requested by districts. So this should give an example about how each district might have a different time frame on their audit. So This is to lend an example of how we can take an organizational priority, tie it to a department or a program's goal, and then break it down even further according to those who are implementing the goal, the work of the goals. For the board level, we would wonder if you are satisfied with the priorities, the 3 priorities, and if so, we would present them on the May board for your adoption. And once that's done, we begin the work throughout the organization and with the board on developing the goals. So the board would be developing its own goals for the priorities. So would we. Any questions about this process or the priorities? Any thoughts about the priorities? Do we need to revisit them, or does the board feel good about those priorities moving forward? I don't know, Scott, if you want to move them back up again to the top of the page.
I like to,
Yeah, I feel good about it.
I think they're good. One of the things I like is that sometimes, especially years ago when I was a new board member, I remember there was always conversations about mission drift. And when BOCES tries to tackle these issues themselves, you might run into mission drift, but this isn't that. This is coordinating and helping and using the resources around us in the community to be able to facilitate this. Because in the past, it seems like, not this board, but it seems like some boards could do some mission drift and want to try to tackle these issues themselves because they're important and they feel as though they have the ability to do that. But the way this is structured, I think is appropriate and well thought out. So that's just my comments. Russ, you had.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that silence is consent. You're all thrilled with priorities.
Agree.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to move on. We'll get those priorities set for the May agenda for your approval, and then we'll move forward organizationally on developing the goals. So next year, at the same time next year, we'll be reviewing the goals and our progress toward them. So that's kind of exciting. Next is relates to a position that we think will surround equity and student supports. So as I had shared in updates, and I think might have been part of board discussion last meeting, we have a convergence of two things that are kind of serendipitous. One is within the DIP plan, we know that the fabulous Ann Turner is going to be segueing into half-time work all about education leadership for the region, which left the curriculum and instruction piece open, and we were working with the superintendent's cabinet trying to think about how is that work going to be tackled by the organization, what will that look like? Well, at the same time we're getting ready to have that discussion, the community schools COSER begins to take off. We're able to offer that now. Chris has been to the New York Mills board meeting. He's been asked to go to Holland Patton, so districts are starting to ask for that service. And we talked about that last meeting to say that we think there's a position in that we're going to have someone to come in and coordinate all of that, make sure that we're getting the connections with the different community agencies, and ramp that service up. So that's created this neat opportunity. So meeting with the superintendents, we looked at community schools and we looked at the curriculum and instruction piece. And we're thinking it's a position. And it's a position that focuses on equity and student supports. So now when a district is tackling things like learning loss, they come to BOCES and they're having a conversation with the PPL department. And now the department can talk about, yes, maybe you need a curriculum audit. We have to see if there's learning loss, let's say, in reading. But now we can also talk with you about your demographics and your individual students and what are their needs. How many students are receiving free and reduced lunch? How many of them have access to a direct healthcare provider? What are your levels of counseling supports? How can we put you in contact with that? We can now offer a whole child perspective and be able to help the superintendent tap into improvements related on that whole child perspective, which hasn't yet been done in our organization because this offers a new way to bring it together. We talked about it with a cabinet that has received incredible support, and now we're trying to think about what that looks like in terms of a position. The cabinet members expressed their desire that that position potentially be a person who has experience at district level, experience in a component school district. So this could be a former assistant superintendent, a former curriculum director, a former director of special education. Yes, it could also be a former superintendent, but someone who understands how the school districts work holistically, because we want to look at the children in that holistic way. In terms of price point, we still would have to determine where that would come in. It's definitely not a position that's $90,000 a year. It's probably upwards of that. It's not a position that's $150,000 a year either, certainly. And where it falls into in the system. In the organization, it would be in the PPL department, it would report to Chris Hill. But in terms of whether or not it's a labor position, does it belong to a unit or does it belong on its own? It's not part of a unit. We still have to walk through with attorneys. We want the superintendents to play a role in the hiring of this position and interview for it because it's a service that they would tap into directly. So we bring this to your attention because what I would need to know is your thoughts on that idea, because I would need to move forward with starting to call the attorneys to find out where does it fall, like do we recommend that to be a position in a union or not? Then the unions, I'd have to put together the request for the positions. The unions would have to sign off on whether or not it belongs to a union, and if so, which one, and then bring it for the board for your approval. We really want to see if we can get someone into that work by July 1, because this person is going to have to kind of run around a little crazy for a while, getting in touch with all of the regional agencies to start to set up support networks for the schools. Some schools, it won't be quite as high intensity if they choose what's Connected Community Schools, which is one of like the vendors, because Connected Community Schools does a lot of that, but other schools want to pick and choose different providers to support their children. And in those circumstances, contracts are going to be established for all of this. This person would also have to deliver curriculum and instruction supports, which is what Anne has done. They are also going to have to specialize in equity and diversity. Now, the Regents has just come out saying that this is a priority for all of our schools, but we recognize that we need to have someone for professional development regionally who can specialize in equity and diversity topics for our region. So we see this as kind of an interconnected position funded by the Community Schools COSER. So we think we have a funding stream for the job. Any thoughts? Because I would be putting the approval for that through on the May agenda.
I would like to say that it appears that it started at the board level. I remember about 5 years ago, we were thinking about doing this, and we sent it to the superintendents. They agreed. All you need to do now is come up with the particulars of the job, the description, your estimated cost, your legal things. And if you don't move ahead on that this next month, we won't get anybody by July 1st. I mean,
Correct.
It's really nothing for us to discuss and debate at this point because we don't have anything concrete in front of us. But I think we all go along with the fact that we need to get there.
All right. Any other thoughts, Russ?
No, I agree with Elaine 100%. That's the direction we've been trying to go for a very long time, and it's there. So, and again, I thank the team for your hard work with that COSER and getting that up and running. And it's only going to be extremely valuable in many ways that we didn't even anticipate. So I'm pleased. And yes, let's move forward.
Just a clarification question.
Yep.
So is this person like a resource like Chris and Scott are, and then they find areas that the districts need to do better in, and then they start billing on that? Or is the person the billable piece from BOCES to the district?
Right. So the cost of the person would come through the COSERs. Like Chris's salary is paid through, I couldn't even count how many COSERs probably pay for Chris's salary. And same thing with Scott's, kind of, when he's moving into the other position, the bulk of his salary will be paid through the administrative budget. Ann Turner, it's all coming out of COSERs. So the cost of the position will primarily be funded through the community schools COSER. In terms of how it's used, it could work in two ways. It could be that I'm a superintendent and I realize I need additional, let's say, counseling supports for students, but I don't want to hire full-time counselors because it's not sustainable. I might directly call the director of equity and say, hey, I need some counselors. Can you help me with the community school COSER? And yep, we can set that up. I might be a superintendent who's saying, God, coming back from this pandemic, I've got kids who are reading 3 grade levels below. And I come to you and I say, I've got kids whose reading levels are really low. And that person would say, well, here are some things we can do. Let's do a curriculum audit. Let's take a look at your formative assessments. Let's take a look at your student demographics. And let's look at your individual students. What are you doing for intervention teams? What kind of supports might they need? And do you have them in place? And that would get into community schools. So they could be like a thought partner. It's interesting because the superintendent said that if you're a smaller district, you can't afford to hire your director of curriculum or your assistant superintendent for curriculum. You can't have it. So you rely on the PPD office, or the PPL office, for that work. So this person could be like that person for a smaller district, but they can be accessed by a larger district too. You're welcome. Any other questions?
I like the qualifications that you stated earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I just want to keep our focus on the strength of the interpersonal skills of this individual, Dr. Coburn.
Yes.
The need is there. It's been identified for years, but delivering the services, we need to have a person that can communicate, as Mrs. Turner has done for her entire career, who people can relate to, people can respect. And I think the delivery of that service will be successful based on the personality of that individual. So I think we're headed in the right direction, but I don't know how you write up a job description and make that priority number one, but interpersonal skills, as Mr. Hill and Mrs. Turner have exhibited, I think are of utmost importance.
I would agree.
So,
Mike?
So this person is problem solving. Will they be using solely the resources of BOCES, or will they be looking at community resources?
So both, right? So when you look at that community schools COSER, it's based on community resources. So absolutely, they'll look at community resources, and that's why it's going to be important for this person to be hired soon, because they have to familiarize themselves with we are resource rich in terms of community agencies. But also, they'll look at BOCES resources. So for example, conducting curriculum audits is something we do. So wouldn't necessarily go out for a vendor for that, but in terms of some of the student-focused work in the wraparound services, for example, you would be looking at regional agencies.
I'm thinking of something like pen testing or cybersecurity, that they would tackle that part of the scope as well.
Well, cybersecurity isn't part of the community schools COSER, but it's interesting. One of the conversations we had, the 5 of us, we were in like a secret room, and in the secret room, we were thinking about what might be, we're doing the lighthouse work, right? What might be needs of districts? We don't know for sure. And we think there's power in those audits. And it's not just curriculum audits, like you can have technology audits. There's a lot of different audit services, and they're not all monetary, that can be done for school districts. So we might come into a place where superintendents sit down and say, why don't you do some audits for us and give us some recommendations on what you think we might need and what might benefit us in the future? And they could go beyond the scope of curriculum and instruction. But there's a fine balance with that, because I will tell you, as having been a superintendent, I wasn't always appreciative, because money was tight, when vendors or BOCES or regional information centers, the RICs, would knock on the door and say, let me tell you what you need. I would sometimes be like, let me tell you what I need, because I'm in the district and I know what we need. So there's that balance piece of, yes, I think we can offer these, and I think more and more people will come in and want to be a part of that. Right now, they absolutely want to be a part of it with community schools, so that's very exciting. but I think they might open that door more. So a technology audit might trigger that, and that would be done through technology. But accessing vendors through technology sometimes can be aidable and sometimes is not aidable, and that depends on the vendor and the service.
Wouldn't it be through the Madison BOCES somehow, leaning on their resources? Because they're the ones, I believe, who are focused on the digital literacy, the up-and-coming pen testing effort that the state has, and other types of technologies that are related. So in that case, I would assume they'd be drawing from those resources. So I'm trying to understand what holistic here is, because you used that word first.
Okay, that's a great point. So when we talk about holistic, I'm talking about the whole child piece, in particular to this position of equity and student supports. So we're looking at the child beyond like academics. From the perspective that I think you're talking about is a broader view of the holistic aspects of a district and what it provides. In terms of digital literacy for students itself, that would come up in a curriculum audit, right? So there's digital literacy that is one of the components of things we're trying to teach. So if a curriculum audit indicated that, let's say there's a need for more digital literacy instruction, that wouldn't necessarily go through the community schools coaster, but yes, there could be a connection to the RIC and the work they're doing to support digital literacy. But a lot of technology issues, like there could be a technology audit that would trigger digital literacy also. So it would depend on the type of approach that school district was going to use.
Well, to be honest with it, the superintendents are helping us create this position. And over time, it's going to develop to their needs. Every time someone makes a request, it's going to be looked at and does it fit this position? And that's how we'll develop what this position is going to support. It's really a superintendent's position, depending on what their needs are. You just need to keep track of it so it stays fairly in the line that we want it to stay and doesn't move out other places.
That's true.
Dr. Kilbert, several months ago, Mr. Van Wormer had a presentation by a group that was already in existence, right, Russ? Everybody probably is aware of that. Now, are we competing against them now? No.
So that was Connected Community Schools.
Yes.
And they would actually be one of the vendors that would be working under this coaster.
Okay.
So it is a little confusing. And Chris, could you explain the difference between the different Connected Community Schools?
Yeah, so when I talk to school districts about it, it gets really confusing because of the term community schools, right? So community schools is a national, federal, state initiative to get schools more connected with agencies within their community and things like that. It's a national thing. Connected Community Schools is an agency. It's actually a partnership of 3 different agencies locally that provide that exact service to schools. The Community Schools COSER is a BOCES service. It's like an umbrella that allows us to set up contracts with agencies. So we're clearly establishing a contract with Connected Community Schools, but we'll probably see multiple contracts within the Connected Community Schools umbrella. We'll probably see something with Center for Family Life and Recovery for drug and alcohol counseling. We'll probably see something with a telehealth system. We'll probably see other, I don't want to name too many agencies or anything, but we'll see a number of agencies underneath that. So the Connected Community Schools, they provide those wraparound services, the pre-assessment services. They provide all sorts of services that all fit under our COSER. So yeah, they're absolutely going to be one that we're working with, but there's probably going to be a lot more. In this position, it'll be pretty arduous at the beginning, establishing contracts and vetting vendors, right? You have to be very careful with the vendors that you're allowed. You have to vet the vendors, establish quality control parameters, and billing conduits and all of that kind of stuff. But I hope that explained that relationship a little bit.
I do have a clarifying question. So Tom stepped out, but we have that COSER approved for this year.
Yep.
So I know that you had said, I think Connected Community Schools was one of the vendors we're trying to hook up with right now, right? When might the board start to see contracts go through for approval?
Well, I guess Tom would have to give you the update. I know we've been looking at those contracts and lawyers have been passing it back and forth with that agency.
With Connected Community
So,
Schools,
yeah,
okay.
with that agency, we should see that. I'm gonna let him finish that sentence. With other
Tom, don't leave the
agencies, it
room.
would be after July.
So poor Tom leaves the room, and you know what happens? We start talking about you. Appreciate it. Connected
services of the.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. Connected Community Schools, Tom, I think we're trying to get that COSER through for this year. When might the board see that contract?
Contract with Connected Community Schools?
Yeah.
Right along. It's in the review with the attorneys right now.
Okay.
So you see it in May for sure.
May. Tom, thank you very much.
Sarah? What I'm passing out is basically just a framework of community school COSER. Chris was probably just talking about when I was not here.
So
all those agencies that we had contracts with, right? Because that's the whole key here is the contractual piece. Whether it's with a drug agency to come into our schools, now that can go into the COSER and
if it fits
this
in these
criteria. So I think that's the most.
Yeah, we've been asking the superintendents, if you have current agencies, let us know and we'll take that contract or try to establish that contract so it comes through us instead. And then much more of it is aidable than we thought.
So for those of you at home, it talks about the different types of things that qualify in the community schools COSER. And it's universal referral and screening processes, expanded and enriched learning opportunities for students, family community resource hubs. So you can have like a hub located in your school and they help connect to services for families. Youth mental health first aid training, primary medical and dental care, community-based mental health services, care management and care coordination, medical director, truancy prevention services, and alcohol and substance abuse prevention. So there's quite a lot there that we can start doing to support students.
Wow. Some of those are huge.
Yes.
Like that cartridge.
Huge.
The medical piece is.
Well, this is fantastic. The one thing during the conversation that gives me a little agita is the time frame and the timing, how quickly you need to move on this. And Mr. Nicotera pointed out the right person really has to fill this role. So do you have conversations with the superintendents, and are you able to go and do you have like a short list that you can recruit? I mean, because obviously this is a very specialized position. And, I'm just thinking if you had to do, I don't know your process. So if you had to do it like back in the day, if you did some type of search and people are sending in, I mean, it would take forever and you're getting people that may or may not be. I mean, is there a short list that you can go and call on the superintendent? You're not allowed to say that you do that.
So when we post the position, that's probably one of the first things that happens. When we post the position, we all start calling, hey, you got any names? Throw them in the basket, right? So yes, that's kind of something we would always do. But let's say, July, but this is one of the fantastic reasons we're looking forward to implementing our DIP plan, because if July 1st comes and we need contracts and we don't have a person, I just want everyone to turn their head and just look over where I'm looking right now to the fabulous man in the corner with the tie, because he'd have to be hustling down for some contracts and praying that we find the right person. But yes, we will be.
It's incentivized to get this. Tom and I are doing it now, and Tom's heading out the door in another few days. So, yeah. I mean, I do think that it would be an attractive position as well. It's not just that. It's exciting work to do. It's exciting work that a lot of schools have wanted to do. So I do think that it will attract good candidates.
Dr. Gilbert, just one more comment. Many of you remember the spiffy workers from years, decades ago. And this is I think it's very close to a carbon copy of what that initiative was. But that was initiated by Oneida County.
Yes.
And, but we saw, right, Mr. Turner, we saw tremendous successes with those programs, but then their funding dried up and it was just.
We hired our spiffy worker and she's still with us.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
No, good things happen.
Yeah.
But you became dependent and comfortable and progress was being made. And then one day it was just gone.
Well, I think the closer gives it that sustainability.
Yes.
That I think all districts really look for. So, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is PTAC. Dun, 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 dun. Mr. Hill.
Okay, so with the PTAC program, we've been working closely with MVCs for some time about expansion. So, you know, MVCC really, so there's two barriers to expansion. One is the grant. So we have a grant, and the grant says the amount of students that can be in it. And MVCC provides the free college part of it. So they provide. So MVCC on both, we've got a little bit of wiggle room. So we are now expanding west. This coming year, it looks like we'll have students from the Rome City School District and the VVS Central School District. So our class this year will have 40 kids. Now, just to be very aware, we made sure we had all the applicants we could from our own component districts first before this. These are extra slots. So nobody lost a slot because of this. So that's the short-term goal, is to start getting some movement west. But we've also been working with MVCC and Madison and Oneida BOCES about running a PTAC program on 2 campuses. So the long-term goal would be, PTAC has been very successful, the long-term goal would be to run a PTAC campus here and a PTAC campus somewhere west. An MVCC campus in Rome, within Rome Free Academy, within a school, so kids farther west could get involved. And Madison and Oneida BOCES has been great. MVCC, and we believe we worked out a way to make sure that kids their associate's degree is still free. So we're thinking right now, we got to get, the next step for us is to get permission from the state to do this. I don't foresee that as an issue. But we could see by, this year we'll add some. We might be able to pull this off by September, but we don't want to sacrifice quality to do that. But we are definitely looking at 2022, 23 as a year when there are 2 campuses for PTAC. And it does create some economies of scale for us. It does allow us to share an art teacher between 2 programs, share some of the business teacher that we may not need the 5 sections. It could be a great opportunity for us. MVCC has been absolutely fantastic. Anything that we need, they're right there with us. So we're pretty excited about it. We think it's a great opportunity for kids. We already have, we're just getting to our first seniors now, and we have 3 associate's degrees already out of that program. So it's been going really well, and we're pretty excited about it.
Help me understand extra slots. You said there was extra slots from our component districts that we could go to Rome and VVS.
We got 5 extra slots from MVCC to add 5. And then we had a component district drop with a significant number of slots. So one of our component districts dropped for freshmen, so that opened 15 slots. We first looked to our internal components to see who had extra applicants, and if they qualified, we take them first. But then we opened it up to those others.
The others, Rome and I don't know if it's what it is. We just got involved with them. Originally, the plan was with us, but we couldn't fill the spots, and therefore we couldn't come up with the BOCES program. It's got to be cost effective, and it's That was our discussion, that we just took them in recently.
So you're talking on behalf of MVCC? What you're saying now?
Yes, because that's
Yes.
the program.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, I get it.
And we have to have so many in the program, and since OHM BOCES couldn't fill the slots.
Well, I guess that's my concern there, is that we can't fill those slots.
Right.
And I don't know.
I see that. It would be
I understand it was a grant right from the beginning, and the grant, I believe, was written by the Utica school system.
They're the fiscal agent. They were the fiscal agent. We are the implementing agent.
Right. And I know they got a majority of the slots right from the beginning.
Yep.
And a lot of the other school districts either got 1 or 2 slots to make up the total.
Yep.
Just the promotion of the P-TECH to our districts at a much earlier age for our students to gear up for that, because that's a big move.
Yeah.
If you're introducing this to parents in the 8th grade and they're going into 9th grade, that's too short of promoting that program. Because I think it could be bigger than it is in our component districts. But I just, because we had 1 slot, I mean, I can only speak on behalf of Waterville.
Yep.
And we just couldn't get the kids geared up enough prior to that 9th grade. And when we did put 1 in, I mean, you know what happened. I mean, they didn't last. So I don't know what we can do on that end of it, Chris. But
I do wonder this, Chris. So with this idea of, because it's a convergence of 2 things. So we did have a component district pull back from 15 slots. So there are 15 open slots. So, but that wasn't necessarily the motivation for this. Like, this was part of an ongoing conversation with MV, who wants to expand the P-TECH footprint. So there's a convergence there with that. I want to make sure we're clear about that. However, to that point, Chris, would it always be, like, how many total P-TECH slots are there in this grant right now?
Currently, there's 40.
Okay.
For the incoming freshman slot, there's 40 slots. Now, that was 35 until about 2 months ago.
MV, right.
And then it went up 5 more.
So with this idea of expanding over Westward Ho, does it mean that the number of slots will expand, or is there another grant to support an increase in slots? I think that's
we would not consider that we would be looking for 80 slots. Okay. If we went west. So we, typically we look at what we allow by districts is usually by our WADA,
yep.
Right? It's usually the ratio. But once you get your applicants, if there's still openings, that's when we go back beyond our WADA. So some districts, certain years may have more than others.
Yep. Okay. So I think that's a clarifier that I think is good. So part of that too, with P-TECH was we have to have conversations with Madison BOCES to make sure, are they going to be okay with that? And so far, initially, this is being well received. So I had a conversation with Mr. Budelman. Now he's the district superintendent at Madison, because in their region at VBS, they're trying to move forward with an agricultural program through a building project that they want people to come into. And we have agricultural programs here, but they're kind of like one's in Remsen, one's in Waterville, they're spread apart. So I talked to him about this. I said, well, why don't you let OHM do the regional P-TECH work, because we're closely connected to the colleges and the business and industry that you need for P-TECH. It all just naturally sits in Utica. And maybe your BOCES could start leading in some ag work, so that we might have Madison BOCES ag programs or Madison BOCES ag teachers coming into OHM, and I'd be fine with that. And then we can support P-TECH in the other direction. So that has piqued their interest, and they're interested in meeting some more to explore that. So I think this is good as a foray into more of those regional opportunities that should be happening, and in a way to prevent redundancies between BOCES, because that doesn't have to be the case. So we have a good relationship and we have a good toe in the water here. So fingers crossed that we can make this succeed, because I think it moves us in a better direction ultimately.
But again, I would still like to know how we can promote this
Oh,
earlier
yes.
and to get kids ready it's a big jump.
It is a big jump. And there are ways to do it. You could start, well, there's a lot to it, but there are ways to do it where you can start actually having conversations with kids about kind of career pathways and areas of interests and interest inventories young, and you start that really like in grade 5, 6, so that by the time they're in 7, 8, they're starting to conceptualize that idea of going somewhere else. So yeah, I think that's really good work, and we'd have to work closely with component districts on that. They have to welcome that kind of work into their district to make that happen.
Chris?
I agree with you on that point.
I'm sorry, Dr.
No, it's okay.
So with the withdrawal of one of our local districts, we filled those slots with VVS and Rome students.
And our
own. Now, the number you said of 80, where does that come in?
That would be
In the future?
So I'm talking about two different things. I'm talking about, so the number 80 comes in if we're able to go big here and do a P-TECH East and a P-TECH West. If we're able to do that, that's when we're talking about 80 per year. Right now, we're starting to work with Rome and VBS, and a lot of that is geographic because students are going to be on buses. So Rome and VBS are the closest to us from that region. So that's why we're starting there, and because they were interested. Right, so they've both been interested for some time, so.
Now, would those students from the western part, would they, in their, was it junior year, senior year, come to MVCC?
So probably MVCC on the Rome campus.
Oh, okay.
So they, that's, they
So
would
there's an
probably use
incentive
that.
for them.
We may even see our kids going to that campus with more P-TECH exclusive. There's so much, when I work with Tim Thomas very closely on all of this, there's so many opportunities right now. And actually digital learning has created some opportunities as well of a 2-campus program utilizing digital learning across 2 campuses. We're looking at a lot of things right now. My next step is to get to state ed and get that permission to do this, which I don't foresee as a problem. But it's pretty exciting.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, next is in-person learning update. So I know that there were some questions about how are we managing that? We've got more kids coming back to campus, don't have to maintain 6 feet necessarily, but should, kind of. Chris?
Okay, so a lot of the big change came after spring break. We had a lot of districts target that as a time to start sending more kids back for in-person instruction. Luckily or unluckily, the Friday night before that, the state released new regulations on in-person. The biggest change being that in a classroom, not anywhere else, but in a classroom, you could move from 6 feet of social distancing to 3 feet with masks on full time, without barriers or without face shields. If you had to get stakeholder feedback first from your parents or staff, parents and your staff, you had to get a little feedback first as part of that. So we, on the 5th, we had, our biggest ones were, Utica started sending back 11th and 12th graders after the break, and Whitesboro started sending back all of their students after the break, all that didn't choose to be remote. So that was our big influx. Everybody started sending more back, but that's the big mass from those 2 districts. So that Monday afternoon, we sent a survey out to all parents to get we had 80 responses, basically assessing their level of concern with this change. They were overwhelmingly not worried about that change. I don't know if that's overwhelmingly not worried, but they were not concerned. There were concerns and comments that we're looking to address. Our faculty all had meetings after school within Monday or Tuesday, so we got the word out, and then we were able to move to that. Luckily for us, though, we only have a few situations across the BOCES where we have to go to 3 feet. For the most part, we're able to maintain 6 feet with the mask on at all times. But there are times, there's a couple classes in MSA. As you know, MSA doesn't have the most square footage. There's a couple classes there. And a couple times in CTE, if they need to go into a classroom environment, we're in that situation. For Bridges, right now, there's little to no changes. Bridges has been in person 6 foot for the whole year. So they've had almost no changes whatsoever. So things seem to be going very well. We did a voluntary testing too on Monday. The Monday we brought everybody back, to try to bring people. A lot of people were concerned about spring break, so we did a voluntary COVID testing. Monday after the break, we did about 25 staff members, probably around 35, 40 students total. I don't have that total number right now, but that was the estimate that I saw. The return has been going pretty well. It's nice to see more kids here. The teachers are thrilled to have more kids here. In CTE, we have 60% of their total population have returned to instruction. 40% have stayed remote, chose to stay remote. So those are kids that are remote and they're choosing to stay that way. 5% of those remote were having a very difficult time engaging, not showing up for sessions, not logging in. That's just 5% of the remote. Obviously with in-person, you can't not engage if you're here. So in MSA, we have 47% returned and 53% fully remote. Now with the caveat that the Utica City School District still hasn't returned 9th and 10th graders, so we expect those numbers to change when Utica brings back 9th and 10th graders. Of the fully remote students, we have a much higher number, 23%, that are not engaging well. But as I remind you, these are students with major barriers and difficulties, so the remote can be challenging. But overall, that being said, overall the return has gone well. We haven't been affected by the dance. The local dance yet, but it's much more than that, but we have not, but it's been going pretty well. The staff seems good, kids seem very comfortable. The screening procedures in and out, the temperature taking is going very smooth with more kids. That was one of our concerns, was logistically getting kids in and out, but it's been going pretty well.
So regarding the 23% of MSA students who are disengaged, what does that mean for seniors? Do we feel good about where our seniors are towards graduation?
Thank you for bringing that up. That number is not for seniors. We're doing pretty good engaging seniors right now. So I think that with eyes on the prize, with it being so close, we're doing very well with the seniors. So.
And can you share some of the things we are doing to try to get the kids engaged?
Yeah, I mean, we have a minimum standard of phone calls that need to go out to these houses. We have attendance teachers that we send out to homes and knock on doors. They help to solve tech problems. If a kid is having a problem logging in, we send people out to make sure that they're logging in. And as you know, we have a lot of social workers in that program as needed. It's very, very needed. And in this time, they become very engaged with the families, trying to break down barriers, whatever it is that we can do to get kids back. But, everything we can do.
Any questions?
I'm hearing reports that summer school might be a little, I know Holland Patton is going to have summer school in their school, but it's coordinated and run by BOCES. Is that happening in all the districts?
So we're actually shifting gears on summer school this year. So what we've always done is a regional summer school, a traditional regional summer school. It's kids from every district come in and they make up the course. And so this year, and I'll be very honest, we do it at the district's request, and it's not the most effective model in the world. A lot of times kids who fail, they come to summer school and things don't get much better. So we have this option called credit recovery, where it's similar but different. So what we're doing this year, instead of running a centralized summer school, we're running credit recovery programs in districts wherever they want. So Holland-Patton is one. Holland-Patton is developed with us a very robust credit recovery program. So what we're doing, we're actually doing it currently after school for them too, for kids who failed the first and second market period. But what a credit recovery program, how it differs is you have a classroom all in person, because we find that typically the kids who are struggling need somebody in a room with them. So it's all in person, but let's say there's 10 kids in one classroom. There's a teacher and a teacher's assistant. Now in that classroom, those kids log on to a program called Play-Doh. And in that program, they make up the modules that they did not have success with, right? So they only have to make up, if they pass the first marking period, they don't need to make that up. They only make up what they struggle with. And the teacher, so it can be Johnny on this side of the room taking Global 1, Sally's over here taking French. The kids can be all in the room taking different courses, and the teachers are trained to help them through those online modules and everything. Students are done when they're done. So if Johnny's in there and he's busting his hump and he goes home and works even harder, he can be out in a week. He doesn't have to stay for the whole time. So it does create some economies, right? Because, and what we have to do though is for special areas like math, we have to make sure every site at least gets a math teacher sometimes, because not every certified teacher can help with some of those math issues, but we're setting those up in a lot of districts right now. So Holland-Patton's way ahead of it. They got theirs set up, but we're working with a lot of districts on that right now.
How many?
Well, we're gonna make it count. So I got a lot of, yeah, we're interested. I'll get back to you. So I have a lot of those coming in right now. I think a lot of people are trying to figure out I know Tom's going to talk about federal money later for learning loss. They're trying to still decipher if they can use that for summer school or not, so that whether they're going to do it on their own. So right now, Whitesboro, Holland-Patton, Clinton, I don't think we have Westmoreland yet, and the rest are all, I'll get back to you. So they're all there. Some have told us that they're doing it on their own, and that's fine. We'll support. If they need our Play-Doh, we'll support whatever they need. But it's a good year to try this, because there's no Regents exams at the end of the summer. So what we're doing in Holland-Patton is we're going to give old Regents exams to the kids when they finish, to see if the credit recovery is as effective as a traditional summer school where you take a Regents exam at the end. So we're going to try to get an assessment on that at the end. So that's where we are. And everybody's doing it a little different too. So Holland-Patton has social workers coming in. They have the whole guidance counselors, the whole kit and caboodle is coming in. Others are going to be more bare bones, just the academics, and that's it.
But this is running through a BOCES coaster?
Yep. Yeah, it's our regional summer school coaster. Using a lot of district teachers too. Yeah. So we'll hire their teachers to do it.
Yeah, that was what was confusing me. The reports coming into me were Holland-Patton is running a summer school this summer. And I was kind of sitting there going,
no, it's us.
Yeah.
It's at Holland-Patton, but we're running it, and we've hired in Holland-Patton, they have an elementary program too. It's mostly their teachers.
So we're going to keep on with Chris, because now he's going to talk about end of the year events. I would point out that on your table, you have a fabulous schedule, and Elaine and Gary, this will be emailed to you. But it's just listing the dates of all of the end of the year events. So Mr. Hill, if you'd like to go over that.
Sure. I think the important thing is,
Microphone. Mute button. Microphone.
If it's not Zoom mute, it's the microphone button. I can't get either of them right. So the important note with the newest guidelines on end of the year ceremonies or graduations is, in this room, we need to limit to under 100. Otherwise, we have to test or check for vaccinations. So we have to stay under 100 in this room. So we are doing all of the ceremonies in person and live streaming them as well. So there'll be broadcasts from this room for folks that cannot attend. I hate to do this, but I'm actually going to uninvite all of you because it's parent seats that will, families and things like that. So we would ask that if you can participate or follow it on the live stream. So we're setting all of those up now. This room will be set up in a way when the parents come in, we will issue, when we set the capacity, we will issue per child, they'll get a program invite, and on the back will be a COVID screening. Like it'll be like a ticket in, like the golden ticket, but on the back will be all the COVID screening questions. So we have to screen everybody when they come in. So we're pretty excited about it. We had a little bit of practice last year with the broadcast of the ceremony. So the IT side of it, we're pretty excited about to get it out to more people, but it will be different, right? So some of the setups that we've had in the past, we will not be able to use. The CTE ceremony, which is an award ceremony, not a graduation, it's an award ceremony. That will be students only. For that, and then we'll live stream. That happens during the day. The RPE program, which is not in there, that's Regional Program for Excellence, will be 100% broadcast. It is not an in-person. That ceremony requires people from the private sector, people from families. There's just way too many variables to run an in-person for that one. So those are the dates. That's our plan. You'll probably see the same setup for every one of the events, but we're still kind of working out the seating arrangements and logistics of all of that.
I do want to point out there's 2 fully virtual ceremonies, which is staff recognition will be fully virtual, and so will the Career and Technical Education Honor Society induction, fully virtual. So also on the board's tables and will be emailed over to our Zoom participants is a staff recognition invitation to a virtual ceremony. So it gives you the information you need to watch staff recognition this year. All right, moving on, we're going to talk about sweet, sweet money. It's all about finances, federal money, state money. Some people are rolling in money.
Show me the money.
Show me the money. So Tom Doar, Scott Morris might be chiming in. Money. Don't forget to turn your mic on.
Okay, I'll start it off. In the contrast from when we were developing our budget to this budget when this state budget was adopted is quite striking. The contrast is incredible, actually. We were kind of preaching doom and gloom. We kept our unit costs flat, trying to help the districts out, and then the federal government came along and bailed everybody out. I just want to go over these real quick. It's much more, if you are on a local board, you may have gotten some of this information, probably more particular to your district, but this is more a global view of things. The very first line on this presentation, we only have one slide presentation, is the biggest aid that the state comes across. It's called foundation aid. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with foundation aid. Formula-based, the things that drive it are wealth, relative wealth compared to the state. Theoretically, you get more money if you are a poor district and need more assistance. What the state has done with foundation aid is come up with a commitment for the next 3 years, including 21-22, of a $4.2 billion increase, $1.4 billion each of the 3 years. The districts that benefit from this are the districts that are truly on formula, meaning that so far the factors in the formula, which are your students as far as and your wealth, you've been shorted pretty much up to this point. So those people are on a 3-year step to get themselves on formula, meaning that the money that the formula calculates for them will eventually get to them. Our poster child locally is Utica City School District, have traditionally, this year they are $43 million short on their foundation aid. They're going to get restored about $11 million next year, and then $15 million the year after that, $15 million, $16 million each of those years. And theoretically, by the end of 23, 24, they will be whole. Sure.
Scott, can you share that screen so we can try to follow along? We're in an audio.
I know.
So I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine. Oh, you can see it on there?
Oh, yes.
So everyone, we got our backs to this. I'm just hoping Scott's on the right place.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So the $1.4 billion is a big deal. Like I said, the districts that have what they've always been on formula have been shorted. They're going to get the bulk of this money. The other districts that are not on formula are typically called safe harmless, meaning that they're actually getting more money in foundation aid than the formula is theoretically driving to their district. And this year, all of our components got at least a 3% increase in foundation aid. For our 12 components, we do have 6 that are on formula and 6 that are on safe harmless. So we have quite a disparity in our needs. Even those that are on formula, even under this action by the state, some of them are only getting like 3.8%, some of them are getting 4%, and some of them are getting up to 10% increase in their foundation aid. But everybody's getting at least a 3% increase. So that's good news. The next line, I just want to talk real quick, is UPK. You can see there's about a $90 million increase statewide. Some of our components for the first time, I know Whitesboro, they've got a grant. They're not sure they're going to use it, which is not atypical. It's been this way since UPK has been introduced. It's really not quite enough funding to pay for the whole thing. So you got to kind of try to get a partner that's going to help you out, maybe a private entity that would take care of your pre-K kids and try to work it out. So there is an increase in funding there, and some districts are getting quite a decent allocation. It looks like a decent allocation or a decent increase, but it still doesn't give you enough money to really run a program on a per child basis. Russ?
Just 4-year-olds, not 3?
I think just 4-year-olds. I'm not sure. UPK,
UPK can take 3 after a certain date, but they have to turn 4 by December 1st.
Yeah.
Well, there is a 3-year-old
There
program,
is a 3-year-old program.
so I'm just curious. But
in UPK, I'm sure it's the same parameter. They haven't changed any parameters. They just increased the funding.
Tom, if they receive more funding, are there some schools increasing the program and adding children, or is that what they're doing? Or
the grant size I think is the same. So they would increase. They might be able to increase slots if they got more funding. I'm not sure how many are getting. I didn't analyze our components as far as I know. The Whitesboro got a chunk of money that they never even got before. As far as it was in their state aid run, and I got a call. Why is it in my state aid run? It's because they want to incent you to do it. You know, whether you do it or not is again, it's been a question for districts for probably 15 years.
Because I remember when Remsen added the universal pre-K, when they added the program, it was a big win. They were very excited to be able to do that, but they could only take like 18 kids, and we were always having, more kids.
The lottery.
So
still more. I mean, you have a program in your town, but not everybody can be a part of it. It's really, when you're on the board, you're talking to parents at the soccer field. They're saying, if I don't get to draw the lottery, it's like.
If they get more money, they can only expand slots above 18 if they hire additional staff. So how it works is for every classroom, a classroom can go to 18 if it has a teacher and a teaching assistant. Then if you go above that, you have to add on another teaching assistant, and when you hit a certain number, you have to add on another teacher. So money that they would get would have to go toward hiring that staff, because you have to maintain a ratio of teacher and TAs to students.
So just one other thing in regard to the UPK, because it wasn't funded this past year, so I know we dropped off from it. And the agency that we worked with went bankrupt. And so RFPs, we're going to put an RFP out now, but it's going to be hard, because if you do it, we always put a request for a proposal out for that. So I'm not sure what's even out there, if we can even run programs. And we don't know the cost yet, so.
Yeah, in your case, Russia went from $0 to $187,000. It sounds like a lot of money, but not on a per basis for a full year's instruction.
No, it's not.
So if you have it, you'll probably wind up with the same thing in the lottery situation, and hopefully address some of your kids. Okay, the next bracketed number here, as Scott's going to speak to, those are what's typically called the expenditure-driven aids.
Yeah, this is quite a change, huh? 6 months ago, we were talking about worrying about expense-based aids being given up. Even in our own budget, right? Our own budget for next year, we didn't increase unit costs because of that concern. Now you look at the right-hand column, and that is an increase of $1 billion, which is fantastic. Fantastic. Obviously, the biggest one being BOCES aid and transportation aid. You said that you totaled $1 billion difference between.
It's about a $700 million difference. The governor not only was trying to group, the governor's not only trying to group everything into a services aid as opposed to the individual expenditure aids, he also cut them. You know, because it would have driven about $4 billion, and he had $300 million in there. So this new total on the right is slightly over $4 billion. So there's a $700 million statewide increase in expenditure aids, which is huge. And it's very important for our area. I remember, you know, I've analyzed this many times over the years. We don't get huge increases in state aid. We don't have necessarily foundation aid that's being driven by increased enrollments. So our districts scramble for every dollar. And one of the ways they can maximize their dollar is, and they're very good at it, is looking to BOCES. So shift some services over here. At least you'll drive BOCES aid on new dollars spent at BOCES, and it's a way to really make your dollar go a little bit farther. So it's.
Well, we were looking at that this morning just to see from a county what the total BOCES aid was driven last year. I think you said $50 million.
In Oneida County, BOCES aid is $46 million, just in the county alone. So it's a big chunk of money. All right, below the next couple of things, and I don't want to blast the governor too much, but again, all the stuff that he did on the left side of this page has kind of gone away. He's going to give you the federal money. Down there at the bottom is $3.8 billion, which was the bill that the federal government passed, I believe it was in December, that former President Trump signed. He was basically going to give you that money, and then he's going to take away more state aid as a result of that. That's what that red number on there, that $1,352,000, that's gone. So there's no deducts. And the big thing, and what's causing a lot of work and a lot of brain power, is now this $12 billion of federal aid that is due, that is coming to the state. In two separate authorizations, one by the former administration and one by the new administration. And the new administration is, for the state, is quite a bit more. It's $8.2 billion. The previous one was $3.8 billion. And for our county alone, these total over $117 million of federal funds coming from these two authorizations. The key for most of us is how to make it last, because they basically built in a cliff, even though the cliff is extended. I mean, these funds can be expended out to the 24-25 fiscal year. There are minimum amounts you have to use every year, 12.5%. You can obviously use more. So it's not like you got to, spend all this money the first year, but you have very good superintendents and business officials that are going to look at this and figure out the best way to, I'm trying to look for the right word. I don't want to manipulate too many things, but you got to kind of use your general fund money, and this money will all be in what's called the special aid fund, which you cannot use at BOCES to get drive aid. You can use it for other purposes. But you got to kind of figure out, when you're sitting down with your budgets at home in the district, so how much money can we kind of supplement and supplant in the general fund that would free up some money using these federal dollars that we might be able to spend other places that will drive aid long term. I've already had we've had a meeting, Scott and I, with our business officials in state aid planning last week. We usually meet once a month. Business officials want to meet again next week to just toss ideas around on things you can do. There is a list, and I can get that to you. And it's pretty open. I mean, this is not all that restrictive. A lot of this money you can pay for staff back to March of 20, and you can pay for a lot of different things. I think you mentioned it, Russ, and it's very relative to the conversation we were having earlier. Some of these districts have what they call a learning loss grant. 7 out of our 12 districts have money that is a little bit more restrictive and will have to be used to address some of the struggles that the kids may have gone through with remote learning or other things. Might be a reason. I mean, Gary, you mentioned Holland Patton, and they do have over $1 million of learning loss grant that they can use. Again, it's a special aid fund grant. You have to kind of figure out how to make it multiply, use a little magic, but those are the learning loss funds. Out of that $117 million, it's about $5.7 million is learning loss funds. So it's not a big chunk of this that has a lot of restrictions on it. So it's an exciting time. It was Christmas. I've had a couple of business officials tell me it's the best year they've ever seen. And it's a lot of money, but it's a challenge because of the source. And make no mistake about it, even the state was pretty good with their regular school funding as a result of federal dollars that came their way that they could use in the same way that I'm talking about. They're using their federal money to plug holes in their budget, but then freeing up money that they could send to the schools.
You need to put all your heads together, justify what you do, and see what you can keep in a fund balance that we can give back. It's a way to, you have to toe the line, but you have a lot of flexibility with that. So I guess Como's little problem helped us.
Yeah. You got that right.
At MVCC, we even had 2 people appointed to the board the day after he got into a problem. So,
but Lane, just want to make sure that and for you, Eric, BOCES we're not eligible for $1 of this money. This is all going to the component districts. We don't get it.
They spend it with us.
Oh yeah, that's what we hope. We'll try to encourage them.
So my concern is we've been given this money as a component districts, but then the vendors also know that we've been granted this money. So I wonder if you're seeing some inflation on vendor contracts or hearing anything about that. I just feel like it's there's always a dark cats. I don't want to be the dark cats, but I feel like.
Well, the economy is going to do what the economy is going to do based on this. I mean, there are going to be changes. Everybody's out for the most that they can get from it.
Yeah, I just worry about the inflation from the vendors, and then after the 2024 year, if we can extend it out that far, probably not. But what does that look like for the
vendors want to take in what they can take in too, so hopefully there'll be a balance.
I guess just to be mindful of that.
Yeah. I was wanting to clarify how long we have to spend this.
Right now, the feds can extend it. Right now, it's due to expire on September 30th, 2024. Apparently, the feds and the state has to ask, and they could extend it to June 30th of 25, provided they grant that by, there's lots of dates in here, March 15th of 2022. So there's going to be some conversations between the state and the federal government and the schools as far as, trying to extend this money. We'd like to obviously extend and have some flexibility, but right now, the way it's written, 9/30/24. So it would be which is really the beginning of the 24-25 school year.
Right.
So that's the recent one, correct?
Right, that's the
last.
That's the American.
Right, because the other ones have certain dates too. The
Right.
one in December.
I think that's a year.
I can get you the dates.
But they're all different dates.
Yeah.
The 3. I want to get back to the transportation aid. Does that include all the food service that we used? Did we get that money back for transportation on that?
Yes.
Okay. For delivering lunches and.
Yeah.
Because the thought was if kids weren't on the bus, they were not going to aid us. But that was their initial thought, yes. Okay.
Yeah, they changed their mind on it.
All right.
Well, that's a great budget. I think Russ will be inviting us all down to see Waterville's new football stadium.
No,
The money they're getting.
It won't be at a football stadium, I guarantee you that. We will be hiring social workers for 3 years.
Okay, so that is just a note of interest, and FYI, the June board meeting will not be taking place in this room because this room has to be set up for the end of year celebrations, and it's going to be taking place in the P-Tech room. Is that 109, 104? Do you know what room number? We'll put signs up. It'll be right over here in one of the P-Tech classrooms, our June board meeting.
Okay.
That's it. I'm done with the DS report.
Okay, so we move on to section 7, and we're gonna do some motions to approve some minutes. But before we approve the minutes for for March 10th, the 24th, 24th, and April 14th. On March 24th, we need a correction, page 4, a motion needed to add Heather Johnson, so we need to do that. Correct?
So I think what you can do is ask for approval of the minutes. Correct. The following changes to number 2.
Correct.
Right?
Right. Put it on.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Boucher.
Yes.
I request that we separate the minutes for the March 10th from the rest of the group.
Yeah.
Okay. What's that?
You can pull it out, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that, Gary.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good. We will do that. So we'll pull out March 10th and we'll look for a motion for the approval of March 24th and March 24th and March 14th, 2, 3, and 4. Can we get a motion for that?
So
Moved by Stewart, second by Mr. Okay, so
that's the March 10th.
March 10th we pulled out. Right?
Yep, so you just, that was a motion to approve number 7, numbers 2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, second by Mr. Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, so do we go back and do something with the 10th?
So now you're gonna put a motion for letter A, 7A, to reflect, and you read what you want.
Gotcha, all right. So we need a motion to approve approval for the minutes for the regular meeting of March 10th with the need for the correction on page 4 of the motion to add Heather Johnson. Correct? John? Motion by Mr. Salerno. Motion by Mr. Salerno, right? Second by Mr. Nicotera. Sure. All right, any discussion?
Mr. Boucher.
Halt your process.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Mr. Porcelli.
If we incorporate both of those into what you're doing now, I need to abstain from March the 10th because I wasn't present. However, I don't want to be seen as disapproving of adding Heather Johnson. So I think you need to amend the motion so that those are 2 separate items. Otherwise, I would be abstaining from both.
Well, since you just
Amendment and then the motion. We got to vote on 2 things. So we need
vote on 2 things.
to amend March 10th meeting to include the appointment of Heather Johnson.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
Okay.
Right?
I'm just gonna insert myself, and I apologize to the board for this. We have it a little backwards. So I think what we have to do is restart this. We're going to have to pull out the minutes for the special meeting of the board on March 24th, which is number 3, not number 1, March 10th. We just have the meetings confused. And the amendment is to, we need a correction to a motion made on page 4. That motion should have included Heather Johnson. So it's just a correction to the motion. It's not a correction allowing Heather Johnson to be, like Heather Johnson's already in the minutes, she's already at the meeting. It's just that she wasn't, her name is not reflected in that particular motion.
For March 24th.
Yeah.
Correct. So I think what you're going to want to do is kind of go backwards in time, and you're going to want to do what Dr. Porcelli said at the outset. So you're going to want to get a motion to approve Roman numeral 7, numbers 1, 2, and 4. Approve that. Then you're going to go back to Roman numeral 7, number 3, and you're going to have a motion to accept the special meeting minutes for March 24 to include that the motion on page 4 reflect Heather Johnson, because that motion just didn't list her.
And then
So that,
technical, Heather would not vote on that, correct? Because then she'd be voting on her own,
Where she was at?
or she would
She was at the
abstain.
meeting?
Gary, you're my guy on this.
It was a motion to adopt the public health emergencies.
Or just,
The
she just left her
motion,
name
her
off?
name was
That's-
just not on the motion. It's
They
not
forgot,
about
they put her
Heather
name,
being
up.
at
They
the
left her
meeting.
Uh,
name off.
Oh, okay. I thought
Yeah.
she would be voting on the minutes of her
No.
swearing in.
The swearing in may be included in here, but once she's sworn in, she's an active board member and can vote.
Right, but
So-
is it a conflict to vote on yourself? Gary?
No.
Well, because the change is the fact that her name was left off that item.
No, I
Right.
get that part,
Okay.
but I'm just saying, like, to vote on the approval of yourself.
you technically can vote for yourself, because if it was a tie, you could break the tie.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
you don't have to abstain from a vote of yourself, but you definitely can vote for yourself in a meeting.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay,
Yeah, you don't lose your right to vote once you're sworn in.
all right, Heather.
All right,
I
thank you.
Deb, I made the original motion on 2, 3, and 4. So if I could amend that motion to 1, 2, and 4. You said.
Second by Mr. Nelson.
Mr. President. Mr.
Yes, sir.
President, once again, I need to abstain from voting on A1 March the 10th. If it's incorporated with the others, then I would be abstaining on all of them, and I don't wish to do that.
Do you want to do them individually?
Yeah.
We'll do them individually, Gary.
Do it then.
Yes, sir. No problem. No problem. Who's on first? I don't know.
No, he's on
Okay.
second.
So let's just do the first one, okay? We need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting for March, what's that?
No,
Oh, I thought it was.
we're good.
Ready? Okay, we need a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting of March 10th, 2021. Can we get a motion? Second by Mr. Nelson. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Dr. Porcelli abstains.
Dr. Porcelli abstains. Okay, very good. Now, we need approval for a motion to approve the minutes for the public hearing, the minutes for March 24th, 2021, number 2. Can we get a motion for that?
Sure.
Motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Salerno. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And, okay, motion carries. We'll skip to number 4. Okay, we need a motion to approve the minutes from the annual meeting on April 14, 2021. Can we get a motion? Moved by Mr. Salerno and second by Mr. Nelson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now we will move to approval of number 3, the minutes of the special meeting on March 24th. Knowing that we need a correction on page 4 for the motion needed to add Heather Johnson. Can we get a motion by Mr. Nelson and, okay, got both of them. Russ and Gary. Okay, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, I got through that one. This is the hardest test. The rest will be smooth sailing. All right, well, thank you for your patience, everyone. Okay, now we're going to move on to get a motion to approve the consent agenda for B, C, and D. Can we get a
Mr.
motion for that?
Mr.
Yes,
President.
sir.
Before we do the approval on B, C, and D, may I ask a question, point of information concerning appointments on page 19 of the one set of minutes? the ones hold on a second, the ones for March 10th, and then on page 5 of the current proposal. My question is that on the appointment of, I believe it's Ms. Almanzi, the dates do not correspond. On one, she was appointed from 2/8 to 4/9, and in this report, which we're approving, she's going to be given a different set of dates. I just think we need a clarification before we move ahead.
Sure.
Okay, hang on just one second, Gary. Let's take a look at that. I just checked in the minutes. The minutes say 2/8 to 4/9, right, Gary?
The ones that we just approved say 2/8 to 4/9, and I think in our current approach to things, she's being hired for a different set of dates. I don't object to the person. I just think the dates do not correspond.
Well, if you look at the material, there is a letter from her. So apparently there was some change in the dates based on some illness in her family.
I again do not object to the person, and I do understand that, Mrs. Favo. However, we did hire her for a certain period, and now we're hiring her for a different period. If the superintendent's fine with it, I'm happy.
There's two different positions, actually. Chris, do you want to speak to that real quick?
Yeah, you'll see it is two different positions. We originally hired this candidate as a short-term substitute for the virtual academy. She had a family tragedy, had to do an emergency resignation. So obviously, she leaves. Then we had a maternity leave in CTE go out early before expected, and she was available, and we brought her back. Her family tragedy had passed, and we brought her back. There's another appointment in here, a Malagese, that's connected to all of this too. She was an emergency when the candidate we're speaking of had the family emergency. The Malagese was the emergency fill-in from inside the organization. So this is quite a mix here.
It's further compounded because you will see that particular teacher being appointed in the minutes that Gary's referring to. And then in this board meeting, she's both resigning and being appointed again. So all the confusion is certainly understandable because you're seeing this name fly through 3 times across 2 meetings.
Gotcha. Okay,
It's
Dr. Marcelli.
I have a couple of two real quick questions and just a comment on this consent agenda.
Yes.
It'll just be really quick. Okay, I would like to know, do we still do exit interviews and offer exit interviews if people want to do them?
So it's funny, I came across the same request in one of the letters to do an exit interview.
Yes, right.
I don't know the process, so I'm going to learn whether or not that was something that was done by HR, which I think it might have been, or if it's something that's done by a supervisor. But yes, we will do exit interviews with that person. I'm just trying to determine how this organization goes about doing it.
Yeah,
Someone in this room,
we need to be clear on the process. And relative to that with the HR, just a question, I would appreciate at some time having an update on what's happened in HR. I see that.
Oh, yeah, an HR update? For sure.
So just let us know at some point in a letter or whatever. Okay? And then my last question, I guess, is for Scott. It's about the science bid awards. And you do have the people who won the bid. However, after that, there are 2 kinds of things indicated. There's a section of things that said there was a bid submitted but not awarded, and then there was another section of a whole bunch of them that said that the board did not get a bid submitted. So the ones that were submitted and not awarded, is that because they didn't meet the specs, or what's going to happen with the rest of that material?
Yeah, that is exactly right. So they were bid but not awarded. My understanding is we're not purchasing.
So are we
it.
gonna rebid?
We're not gonna rebid this year, no. We're good with where we stand right now.
Okay, so we don't really need those items. Okay, and then
Okay.
the other, we didn't receive bids, we requested them, but nobody picked it up. We don't need
That's
those.
correct.
Okay, so we're all clear with the science kits.
Yeah, we do a couple bids a year, right? So this is, it's not done just once a year, so we'll probably do another one in the fall.
Okay,
Take up
I
piece.
just wondered if they told you the spec and what it had, that's all. Thank you, that's my questions.
Sure.
Sure. Doctor?
Mr. President, I'd just like to know what the resolution on my question was.
Okay, so you mean about the young lady with the conflicting dates?
Yes, sir. Is that been resolved?
Yes, it appears as though she was working here and she had to leave and then she came back. And
Okay.
so the dates look conflicting because she's had different jobs, family emergency, and come back and she'll be shown again. So it's, I guess there's no other way other than to have people resign to in some positions, I guess, correct?
The retirement
Yes,
letter interleaves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so she,
I'm
elementary
satisfied,
teacher-
no problem.
oh, okay,
Okay,
no, okay, want to make sure everyone understands.
okay, good. Yeah, I guess it would be confusing because,
Well, elementary teacher.
Right.
Resigned, now
Right.
it's English teacher,
yeah,
so that's what we're seeing, is it's two different positions,
gotcha.
just same name.
Gotcha. And they all have to be approved, so she's in there several times. Okay, very good. So with that being said, we'll go back to looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda for B, C, and D. Can I get a motion? Moved by Ms. Corbin, second by Mr. Salerno. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And we move on to board topics. Dr. Kilburn, board topics?
Well, yep, so this is for the board, and there's a process number 3, which I think is one of the last, it's the very last page in your packet, page 101, and it's board officer election. And I think I addressed it in the blue memo, so just let me check what I had said in there. As noted in this procedure, the board it's your time to consider officerships for next school year as a discussion, an informal item on the April agenda. And this is process 3 comes out of your board handbook. So it says here in numeral number 4, at its April meeting, the board shall consider officerships for next year as a discussion and informational item on its agenda, which is why it's on your agenda. The purpose of this session is for the present officers to inform the board of the status of their officership relative to the legality of running again and/or the desire to be extended for the next school year. Also, each board member may share his or her desire to be an officer, willingness or unwillingness to become an officer. And it further says the president. Go ahead.
I wrote that policy, and what we do is we ask those who are presently officers, which are Mr. Boucher and Russ, and they're eligible to go on another year because this is their first year. So they will indicate if they are willing to go on for another year. And then if they are willing, their names will be in there. And then anyone else that wants to oppose them in any of those spots can say that they are interested also. So I guess Steve and Russ, are you going to be a team next year? Or
Yeah, stick with me, yeah. All right, good. Sounds good, yes.
Yes.
okay, does anybody else want to have their name put in? Certainly you can.
Anyone? You guys are good.
Does Mr. Boucher need to appoint a committee at this point in time, or is it that done in April or done later?
Do we need to form a committee?
Yeah, if people are going to put their names in, they have to go someplace.
That's true.
Well, right, but he can appoint. He's going to have to ask the people to be on the nominating committee.
Yes.
Before he can appoint them.
We'd reach out to the people that served on the nominating committee the last time and ask them if they'd want to serve again. Is that normally how you, or see if they don't want to, we'll ask new members too?
Elaine,
This is one of your superpowers, Steve.
yeah, I think you as the board president, you get to.
All right, who likes me?
Pick your committee.
Do whatever.
What was last time, wasn't it,
I think Mike was.
Mr. Moore and Michelle Anderson?
Michelle's like,
Doreen, Mr. Moore.
Doreen was,
and Mike Moore.
Doreen, Mike Moore, and Ann Turner,
Wasn't
We
John
forget Turner for
Griffin?
everything. Was John on it? Yeah, John was too,
Was
wasn't
on the nominating committee?
No,
I'm
he was
kidding. We
He was
pick
kidding.
her name for everything.
Okay.
I'm kidding, that was a joke. We pick Ann for everything somehow. So, all right, so Doreen and Mike. And,
It
was
was
it
John Griffin.
John Griffin?
Oh.
Would anyone else like to see?
Would anyone else like to be on they need 3 people?
I don't know.
Gary.
Yeah, Gary Nelson.
Gary was too. Gary Nelson? Okay, Gary Nelson would like to. So there we have it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. It's my one superpower I got today. All right, awesome. There, it's
Reach out
done.
to them for a meeting and
Yeah, we'll reach
off we
out.
go.
We'll contact. We'll be in touch.
Don't call us, right? Is that what you're gonna say?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So then we move on to, what do we move on to? Old business, doctor?
None.
There's no old business. How about
Mr.
executive?
Boucher, Mr. Boucher.
Yes, sir, doctor.
Under old business, I think it would be in order to at least note, if not offer kudos, first of all, to our culinary arts program. I believe that Oneida-Madison BOCES received a $25,000 grant, and we ought to pat on the back Chef Hoffmeister and the people there, as well as I think our board members, Mr. Nelson and Mr. Stewart, because it was awarded for Farm to Table program.
Nice.
Am I correct? And additionally, I think going to Mr. Hill, we ought to recognize the fact that Mrs. Petronella was selected as Leader of the Year in the Skills Program. Am I correct, Chris?
Yep. Yes, she was.
I'd just like to make
Outstanding.
note of those.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, you know what? You know what I just realized too?
Thank you,
Thank you
Gary.
for that, because remember when I first came, there was a weekly update that was given to board members, but it wasn't like I do one now. Right now I kind of update you on the internal workings of the BOCES, but there used to be another thing you got. Do you know what I'm talking about? You would get it on Fridays. It was like called the weekly bulletin or something, and it came out of the DS office. And it kind of featured more things like that. Let's see if we can bring some of that back and incorporate that into either the weekly update or as like some way to get more of that information. Yeah, I could. I think it's a good idea.
Some great
Gary, thank
kudos.
you for bringing that up. That's
Yes,
brought
thank
that
you,
to my
Gary.
attention.
Okay, super. So there's old business. Now we move on to executive session, Dr. Kilburn.
Yeah, you need a motion to go into
We
executive
need a
session.
motion to go on executive session
So moved.
for the purpose. So move.